Hello, my name is Emma, and today I'm doing another book haul. It is the first book haul of 2020, so these are all of the books I've gotten so far this year. I have 21, and they are a mixture of a lot of new young adult releases and ones that are upcoming, but I've also been really interested in trying out more adult books lately, so I have a nice little haul of those as well. I have especially been looking forward to this book haul because my friend is allowing me to film in front of this super awesome exposed brick wall, which I've been really looking forward to. And I thought of this while I was in the bathroom earlier, and I had to share it with you guys. It's a brick, it's a wall, it's a brick, wall, book, haul, it's a brick, it's a wall, it's a brick, wall, book, haul. Alrighty, let's just dive in. So the first book I have is one I actually bought in 2019, and I was reading it at the time, so I forgot to include it in my last book haul, but it is one you guys have been waiting for me to talk about. And that is The Toll by Neal Shusterman, which is the third and final installment in the Arc of a Scythe series. Many of you guys know that the Arc of a Scythe series is one of my absolute favorites, and I had been really waiting for this conclusion. Unfortunately, I kind of fell into a little bit of a book slump at the time of me reading this, and I haven't gotten around to picking it up again, but it is definitely one of the next books I really want to start. If you haven't heard me talk about the Scythe series before, it takes place in a futuristic world where humanity has really eliminated all negative aspects of life, including natural death. The world of the story is just absolutely fascinating. The characters are super well-rounded and lovable, and it is just such a thought-provoking story. It makes me question things about morality and mortality and about what is right and wrong. So if you have not picked up this series yet, I'd highly, highly recommend it. I think what I'm going to do is just start right over from the beginning, give it a total fresh chance, but I have no doubts that I will really, really enjoy it. Next on my list is another conclusion to a favorite series of mine. It is one I'm actually currently in the middle of, and that is The King of Crows by Libri, which is the fourth and final installment in the Diviner series. Many of you might know that I'm currently hosting a read-along for the Diviner series with Sejr without an H and Monica Kim. We have one final live show for King of Crows coming up, so I will totally keep you guys updated with when that is if you would like to discuss it with us. But I'm absolutely loving every single second of it. This cast of characters is just so dynamic, and I've loved the way that they've grown individually but also together as a group across all of the different mysteries and horrifying situations they've been put in. I'm so intrigued to see where this story ends up, how the characters' storylines pan out, and just how we're gonna defeat the King of Crows. And I'm just so excited to continue listening, and I will totally share my thoughts when I'm done. Next up, I have two copies of the same book, and as per usual, what is followed up by that sentence is that they are, of course, Cassandra Clare novels. It is my most anticipated book of the year and currently my favorite book of the year, and that is Chain of Gold, the first book in the Last Hours series. So this is the absolutely breathtaking original hardcover edition, and I did get to go to Cassie's signing for Chain of Gold, so it is signed and personalized. I have a vlog for that coming soon, and also while we're on the topic of Chain of Gold, I have my full spoiler-filled reading vlog, which will also be in the description if you're interested. But this is the Waterstones exclusive edition, which I have been so looking forward to. I've collected all of the Waterstones editions of the Dark Artifices series, and so I'm super intrigued to see what they're gonna do with the rest of the Last Hours. Not only does it come with this gorgeous portrait of the cast, which was illustrated by Cassandra Jean, but in the back it has an exclusive short story following Will and Tessa. Though I finished Chain of Gold, I literally only realized now that there is an extra story in the back of this, so I'm totally gonna have to dive into this really soon. I feel like everyone has sort of heard about Chain of Gold so far, but if you haven't, it is the sequel series to the Infernal Devices, and it follows an entirely new generation of Shadowhunters as they have to face the greatest threat that has ever come to London. I loved Chain of Gold with every fiber of my being. I am really surprised with how much I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I have no clue where to rank it among the rest of the Cassandra Clare novels, but it is super, super close to the top. We all know that the Mortal Instruments and those characters and that plot just holds my heart, but there is something totally different about this cast of characters in the ways that they interact and know each other that just made it a totally different experience. And honestly, whether you are a big fan of this series, someone who has read a couple of books but sort of fell out of it, or if you have never delved into this world before, I feel like Chain of Gold is a fantastic entry and follow-up to this world. So I highly, highly recommend picking it up. Next up, I have a book that was sent to me by one of my very good friends named Jasmine, and she sent me a copy of Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is the new UK paperback edition. It has like this totally new cover, and like the best part is these gorgeous ombre stained edges. Daisy Jones and the Six is now one of my all-time favorite books. I've read it 3 times already, and I know I will be diving back into this world and these characters very soon into 2020 because I'm already having withdrawals. It has been a truly life-changing story to me. There are so few books that I feel I've connected with in this way, and I could not be more excited for the Amazon TV series that is eventually coming out, to see these characters in real life and to hear all of this incredible music. I've really been looking forward to getting my hands on some of the gorgeous UK editions of this book, so thank you so much to Jazz for sending it to me. Next up, I have another 2020 release that I have been absolutely dying for, and that is Heartstopper Volume 3 by Alice Oseman. Heartstopper is a graphic novel series that I picked up at the very end of 2019 and just fell head over heels in love with. If you're a frequent watcher on my channel, you guys know that I do not typically pick up graphic novels. It's just like not my particular favorite medium to consume stories. But that has totally changed after reading Heartstopper. I just became so invested in these characters and this adorable love story that it really has broadened me up. And so far this year, I've already read like 2 graphic novels, which is as many as I read last year. Heartstopper is currently like a booktube favorite. It follows these 2 boys at an all-boys school in the UK, and it is all about their friendship and how that develops into a grander relationship. And so the 3rd volume of this story takes place as they are on a school trip to possibly Paris. Yes, they go to Paris, and so I'm really excited to see how things are going to progress in this story at the point where their relationship is at. Even if you are not a graphic novel fan like myself, I definitely think Heartstopper is a great transition into the format. The art style is very inviting and super expressive. It carries the story in a very complete way, and the characters are just so cute, and I love their romance together, and I just really can't wait to continue on with this story. Next up is a book that I am absolutely itching to read, and that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This is the newest release from Victoria Schwab, who also writes under V.E. Schwab, and it comes out in October of this year. I got my hands on an early copy because Tor had invited me to a night of like drinks with V.E. Schwab, which was absolutely just like so much fun. I don't know a ton about Addie LaRue other than it follows a woman who has made a bargain to live forever. And so the story sort of spans all of the centuries of her life across the different continents and the people she encounters, but the terrible side of it is that anyone she meets will inevitably forget her. But Addie's life is about to change when, after 300 years, she enters a hidden bookstore and a man remembers her name. This book is just an absolute monster, and I am really excited to dive into it. Like I said before, I've just been craving some adult releases lately, and I really trust Victoria Schwab as an author. If I'm correct, she had been working on this book for like 16 years, and I just know it is going to be a whirlwind of emotions with beautiful prose and just like a really gut-wrenching story, and I cannot wait to dive in. This is definitely one I foresee myself picking up in the very near future. Next up, I have Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. This is a book that has kind of been on my radar since it has come out, but as there is the new TV show coming out, I've been really reinvigorated to give it a chance. This story takes place in a very prim and proper neighborhood in Cleveland, and it follows a single mother who begins renting a home from a family named the Richardsons with her teenage daughter, and the 2 families end up becoming very close. Mia comes with a difficult, mysterious past and a disregard of the status quo, but things are really shaken up in this community when a family attempts to adopt a Chinese American baby, and it sets Elena and Mia on opposing sides. I have heard absolutely nothing but stellar reviews for Little Fires Everywhere, and anytime that a book is getting an adaptation, be it on TV or movies, I'm always way more intrigued and want to push it up on my to-be-read list. I really think I have a good chance of enjoying this one. I'm just craving some books with a lot of substance and some complex themes, and I really feel like this one is going to deliver for me. Next up, I have Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens, and I decided to pick this one up because I had gone to a book club discussion for Daisy Jones and the Six at my local library, and the librarians I was talking to there were just like, you absolutely have to read Where the Crawdads Sing. To be honest though, I don't know anything about it, so I'm gonna read the synopsis real quick. It's really interesting, but I have no idea what to make of it. From what I'm gathering, the main character's name is Kaya, and she is known in town as Marsh Girl, which I'm assuming is because she seems to live in the marshlands? For years, Kaya has survived entirely on her own, but the time comes when she begins to yearn for real human connection, and it seems to be around the same time that two men from town meet her and become enamored with her. Oh yeah, and also, apparently she was like accused of murdering a guy in like 1969 because she was like weird, and so everyone naturally assumed she would be a killer. I really don't have a good grasp on what this one is about, but it seems like a very impactful story. This is another one that just like anyone who mentions it appears to love it. It seems to be like a very compelling coming of age story and something that I think I would really enjoy. Next is a novel that I have been eyeing for months in bookstores, and I just keep pushing off buying it, but as I was getting into like buying more adult books, I was like, well, I want even more now. But I am extremely excited to read City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert, who is the author of Eat, Pray, Love. So the reason I have been so infatuated with picking up this book is because it reminds me a lot of one of my other all-time faves, which is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and you'll understand why in a minute. So our main character's name is Vivian, and at 19 years old, she is kicked out of college and sent to live with her aunt in Manhattan, and this takes place in 1940. Vivian is thrown into the world of theater, surrounded by showgirls, actors, writers, and more, but she makes a mistake that ends up becoming a professional scandal and affects her life for many years to come. But at 89 years old, Vivian is ready to share with the world her life story and explain what happened all those years ago, and there's a quote from the synopsis that I absolutely love. It says, "At some point in a woman's life, she just gets tired of being ashamed all the time. After that, she is free to become whoever she truly is." If that is the quote that they choose to represent the story and be like one of the first things people encounter when they are picking it up, I am so hyped to read this story. So I think it's very similar to Evelyn in terms of the plot, but I'm expecting a very different story along the way, but with similar themes of being authentic and making autonomous decisions and just being who you truly are. I foresee myself really, really loving this book, and as I've read from Elizabeth Gilbert in the past, and while Eat, Pray, Love like wasn't the super impactful read it is for many other people with me, I loved her writing style, and so I'm really excited to see what comes from one of her fiction works. Next up is a book I have talked so much about on my channel, but it finally got released and hit bookshelves, so I had to pick up a final copy, and that is My Dark Vanessa by Cait Elizabeth Russell. My Dark Vanessa is another incredibly moving story. It follows a young girl who begins learning at an elite boarding school, and as she is having trouble fitting in there, she begins a romantic and sexual relationship with her English teacher. Now, Vanessa has spent her entire life believing that their relationship was consensual and it was the greatest love story of her life, but if we fast forward like 15 years later, she's in her 30s and new allegations are coming out about this teacher abusing some of his other past students. So among this, Vanessa is forced to confront her past, unveil some trauma she didn't even really acknowledge she had, and it is all about her sort of learning how to rewrite her own narrative. This is a book I read in 2 days, in basically like 2 sittings, and it absolutely broke me. This is another book where I know for a fact this author had worked on it for like over a decade. I believe she started writing it when she was 16, and it was a part of her thesis for her doctorate in creative writing. It not only gives voice to victims of sexual trauma, but it also explores the institutional obstacles in supporting them and exploring the types of people who are complacent in allowing these situations to occur over and over and over again. It is definitely sensitive for themes of pedophilia, child grooming, sexual abuse, and more, but it is a poignant story and one that was entirely unforgettable. So if it's something that you think you might be interested in, I definitely recommend giving it a chance. So the final adult book on this haul is House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas, which is the first installment in the Crescent City series. This book was sent to me by Bloomsbury, and I have very much been looking forward to it, as it is it technically, no, this isn't her first adult release, but it is her newest adult release. Our main character's name is Bryce, and when a demon murders her closest friends and she somehow gets framed for the crime, she is hell-bent on avenging her friends' deaths. Our other main character is a fallen angel named Hunt, who is forced to assassinate on his boss's orders, but with a demon wreaking havoc in Crescent City, he is offered a deal to team up with Bryce and help avenge her friends' deaths, and in exchange he will be given his freedom. It seems like there's been some mixed reviews for House of Earth and Blood. I've seen some people that think it is absolutely fantastic and other people that were very underwhelmed by it. Sarah J. Maas books have kind of been a hit or miss for me. I definitely prefer the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, and I've never gotten around to finishing Throne of Glass. Many of you know that situation. But I'm definitely intrigued. I feel like this is a story I could really get behind, and the way that people talk about Bryce on Twitter as her being like this badass main character who's super realistic, like, I'm really excited to give it a chance. So next up, I have a few books that were sent to me by Penguin Teen. First up, I have One of Us is Lying and One of Us is Next by Karen M. McManus. One of Us is Lying was one of like the hottest YA books to hit the scene in quite a few years. It is a mystery that follows 5 teenagers, high school students, who are all in detention together. 4 of them are like super high profile, very popular and well known, and the other is a total outcast. But the outcast dies during detention, and the day after he dies, it comes out that he had planned to reveal some of the secrets of the other people he was in detention with, so they all become suspects in his murder. And I don't know much about One of Us is Next, but it is the sequel to this story that just recently came out this January. Now, I have kind of been like low-key avoiding One of Us is Lying for a while now. Like, as someone who reads like most of the popular YA thrillers, this is one that I've just like not touched with a 10-foot pole until now. Essentially, I just heard there was some really messy representation for not only queer folk, but also people who are depressed. And as someone who fits into both of those categories, like, I've just not at all been interested in reading a book that is going to like offend me, or possibly offend me. I don't know, I haven't read it yet. But in like the last 2 years since this book has been published, I've definitely been gaining a little bit more interest, and I kind of want to find out for myself what I think of it. So while I was previously in the camp of like, I will never read this book because I'm not happy with what the reviews have said, now I'm kind of interested in getting to know my own thoughts. And when I do eventually get around to it, if I do, I will totally share my thoughts with you guys. Next up from Penguin Teen, I have Ember Queen by Laura Sebastian, which is the 3rd and final book in the Ash Princess trilogy. Now, I've met Laura many times over the years in the New York City book scene, and she's just an absolutely lovely person, and I've always wanted to get around to reading her books. Our main character's name is Theo, and she was once the princess of a very prosperous kingdom, but it was overthrown by a tyrant, and now she is forced to do his bidding. So it is all about Theo sort of finding the power within herself and learning how to use her mind as her greatest weapon. It's sometimes hard for me to pick up a new high fantasy series. Like, I'm still just like kind of intimidated going into new worlds every so often, but because I really like Laura Sebastian, and I feel like this book has like a pretty good following, a lot of the people that have read it like really enjoy it. So I definitely think it's one I also could have the potential to truly like. Next on my list from Penguin Teen is Shout by Laurie Halse Anderson. This is an author whom I absolutely adore. She wrote Winter Girls and Speak and a ton of other books that I have yet to read but eventually want to, because I think she's just a phenomenal author. Now, I feel like Speak could really be considered one of the greatest and most prominent novels about sexual assault of our time, but Shout is actually a memoir. It says it is a true story of a survivor who refused to be silent, so it deals with a lot of the same topics and apparently is pulling from Laurie Halse Anderson's own experiences. And another interesting fact about this book is that it is actually entirely written in verse. The whole book is in poetry, which is something like a few years ago I would have ran away screaming from. But in the last year, I read a few books in verse and I really enjoyed them way more than I expected to, so it's really opened me up to this format of storytelling. I find the rawness in her novels to be so inspiring. She's just someone that consistently puts out profound works of literature, so I'm really excited to read what I believe is her newest release. Next up from Penguin Teen, I have The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu. Now, Marie Lu is an author that I read when I was first getting into the world of young adult literature. I loved the Legend trilogy. It is like a classic YA dystopian, and I never got around to reading The Young Elites, but The Kingdom of Back has been really intriguing to me as it apparently follows the story of Mozart's sister. Yes, you heard that correctly, like Wolfgang Mozart's sister.
How many Mozarts are there, you dumb?
Our main character, Nannerl, has always had a gift for music and wants to be remembered forever as one of the world's greatest composers, but as a woman in 18th century Europe, her only life prospects are to be married off by her tyrannical father. Naturally, she has grown up under the spotlight of her brother Wolfgang, but one day a stranger comes to her who says he can make her dreams come true, but of course that comes with a great price. I don't know what it is, but I kind of really want to read this book. I don't have like a grand attachment to classical music, but I love this like magical twist on historical events and people, so I think it's going to be something really interesting and unique. And the last book that was sent to me by Penguin is Burn Our Bodies Down by Rory Power, which comes out in July of this year. Our main character's name is Margot, and
they call me Tiago. I don't know who's Margot.
And for her entire life, it has just been her and her mother against the world, living in their rundown apartment with only each other as support. Margot has always wanted to know where she comes from and who her family really is, and she begins to get some leads when she finds a photograph directing her to her mother's hometown. Of course, there's some secret pasts involved, and Margot has no idea what she has just gotten herself into. I don't know much about it besides that, but it seems really interesting. I did read Rory Power's debut, which was Wilder Girls, and unfortunately I was a little underwhelmed by it, but what I loved about Wilder Girls was the prose and the writing style, and like when I find an author that can really impress me in that aspect, I am totally interested in reading almost anything they put out. I'm also a total sucker for a novel that really explores some intricate family dynamics, and I feel like any book I've read where it's about like this mother and daughter and there's some conflict and some unsaid secrets between them, it always turns out awesome. To close out this haul, I have a couple of books that were sent to me by Harper Teen, the first being Infinity Sun by Adam Silvera. This is the first fantasy release from one of my favorite contemporary authors and someone I consider a very good friend, so I have so been looking forward to Infinity Sun since Adam first started talking about it to me in like 2016. I believe Infinity Sun takes place in modern day New York, but there are also these people called spellwalkers who have supernatural powers and specters who attempt to steal them. So we have two brothers, one who has always wanted to be a spellwalker and have his own powers and just have all the glory that comes with it, but then we have another who just wants all of the magic of the world to disappear. And so what ends up happening is when they are attacked by specters, the brother who does not want anything to do with supernatural powers ends up having them manifest. There's a good line in the synopsis that says, much as they hate to admit it, the brothers are faced with an undeniable fact. One of them has what it takes to be a hero, but it's not the one who desperately wants it. As I was just talking about how I love reading about family dynamics, the relationship between these brothers seems so interesting, and because urban fantasy is like my favorite genre, I feel like it's just a recipe for a book I'm going to really enjoy. I don't know much else about what Infinity Sun holds, but I'm really excited to find out. Next up from Harper, I have Love Boat Taipei by Abigail Hing Wan. This is actually a book I have already read and was actually surprised with how much I enjoyed it. It follows a Taiwanese American girl named Ever who has always done what her parents have wanted and is sort of on this path that they have laid out for her, even though it's not what she truly wants for herself. But everything changes when they send her away to a summer program in Taiwan that is revered as being like the best program to increase their knowledge and education, but ends up turning into a massive place for parties and relationships. So it's a story of a girl who is really allowed to rebel and explore and find herself for the very first time. I was expecting it to just be like this fun, fluffy contemporary that didn't have a lot of substance to it, but I enjoyed it way more than I expected. Something I think that's really notable about this book is it's like one of the only YA stories I've read in the last couple of years that has a love triangle I do not absolutely hate, and it was really fun because it kept going back and forth between both romantic interests, and it reached a point where I was like, I would be happy with either of these, which never happens for me. So it felt like it was kind of putting a twist and adding something new and fresh to a totally overused YA trope. And overall, the story was just sweet, moving, and satisfying. I really enjoyed it, and if you are a fan of YA contemporaries, it's definitely one I'd recommend picking up this year. And the final book on my brick wall book haul is Yes, No, Maybe So by Becky Albertalli and Ayesha Saeed. So our first main character's name is Jamie, and while he is excited for the opportunity to volunteer with a local candidate's campaign, he is totally nervous about the thought of going door to door trying to gain votes. Our other main character's name is Maya, and she is having an extremely terrible Ramadan with her best friend not responding to her and her parents splitting up. So she has no idea why her mom thinks the best idea is for her to go door to door with Jamie and campaign for this candidate. So it seems like a cute and funny story about these two teens who have come from widely different cultures but are brought together by activism. I love reading books about teen activism. It is just so cool to watch young people get involved about issues they care about, and I think it's especially important for these stories to be in the hands of teens. I don't think I've actually read anything from Ayesha Saeed before, but I love Becky Albertalli's books, and I've read almost all of them at this point. So this is like a super highly anticipated YA release. I've seen a lot of people talking about it, and I'm very intrigued to see what I think. So that concludes my brick wall book haul, first book haul of 2020, and I really hope you guys enjoyed. In the comments below, I would love to know what books you have been reading so far this year, what books you've recently purchased or been gifted, and what you are planning on picking up next. But that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you soon for a new one. Bye!